Hello and welcome in. I am Greg Smith, recruiting extraordinaire for Hail Varsity. I'm joined once again for a Football Thursday video by staff writer for Hail Varsity, Steve Marik. Steve, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. A little bit of cloudy skies here in Lincoln, Nebraska, just to give everybody a weather update like we always do. But yeah, cloudy skies, but it's not too cold out, so we're good.
I don't know what's not too cold. I'm going to try to peek at my watch. Oh, it's 52. I guess it's not that horrible. I just wish we could go back-to-back days of sunshine. Like if I wanted to live in Seattle, I would have lived in Seattle. I just feel like we should have, like, I would like the sun to poke out, but we are not here to talk about the weather, though that is your weather report brought to you by hailvarsity.com. And so we are here to talk about the new landscape of college football, or what has become the evolving landscape of college football, which feels like it has rapidly happened. Like I've written this a couple of times on the site. Like I feel like I looked up and the combination of the transfer portal, the one-time transfer exception rule, and NIL has just completely changed the sport seemingly overnight. Like it has not been, we've been a slow build kind of to this. What was it, 2018, 2019, when the transfer portal kind of came about, and then the 1 year transfer rule, because that basically it coincides with the entire Scott Frost tenure at Nebraska, as he's had to deal with this as a first time head coach, which is its own storyline, right? That makes things really interesting. But this summer, NIL has really, really taken off, right? And we've seen the rise, what went from NIL being a thing where, you could actually use your name, image, and likeness to help promote a brand and then get some money in your pocket, additional money in your pocket as a college athlete, to now the rise of collectives, which has completely taken over and dominated the NIL discussion, right? To the point to where these collectives and NIL groups and NIL in general has now been what people kind of view as the leading reason for O'Shawn Mathis, the TCU edge rusher transfer, picking Nebraska, right? And now we're starting to see all over the place where guys are entering the portal, hoping for bigger deals from other schools. And so we'll see where this goes. I guess, Steve, what are your overall thoughts about kind of this spring/summer and what's been happening in the sport?
Yeah, so it's been kind of a hard thing for me personally, I guess, just because I've known college football as just this one thing for most of my life, and now all of this change is happening. It's hard, but I'm trying to accept it and trying to of course players should get paid for what they do, and I think that's right and everything. But boy, I really think that there does need to be some rules about some of this stuff, especially with the boosters and the collectives who are kind of just right now, if things don't change, they'd run the sport. And that, I don't like the idea of that very much, but it's a change, and I'm trying to move along with it and learn as much about it as possible. But all these players deserve to get paid. Sure. I completely agree with that, but maybe some rules need to be put in place to help facilitate all this stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because on one hand, I definitely agree with you that there need to be rules, and I think that the NCAA needed to get out in front of all of this, right? And I think that the NCAA kind of burying their heads in the sand is what, in a lot of ways, to me, led us to this point where boosters kind of filled that void, right? And now you do see the reports because there's a lot of meetings around college football right now. Where you got the Big Ten meeting to try to redo the TV deal. There's something happening in Arizona. Like I can't even keep up with all of the different. Like, does it feel like there's just a million meetings between college football, the minds in college football right now? But one of the things that they are meeting about is how do we kind of reel this back in and wrangle the sport back from boosters or away from boosters. I don't want to say back, because boosters have always been a part of college football, and it's always been kind of that seamy underbelly that we don't really talk about, when in fact some of the best 30 for 30s in history have been about that very subject, right? So we've seen that this has been a thing in college football forever. The difference is now, I think, are two things. The two things that are in combination that I think are making people really uncomfortable right now is that the price tags or the NIL deals, which are really just pay for play. It's not actually NIL at this point.
Yep.
Like those deals are becoming like rumored or out there in public. And guys are now leaving schools where they're doing well to get to better situations, a la NFL free agency or NBA free agency or MLB free agency. And I think for college athletics, that makes a wide range of fans really uneasy. But I guess I want to go here too, is Steve, we've seen those rumors out there. I guess, how do we get here with some of these rumors that are going around, whether it's Jordan Addison, Xavier Worthy? There's a couple of big time situations out there that you hear things about.
Yeah, it's the Jordan Addison one is big. Obviously, he's a former Mark Whipple receiver from last year. He spent 2 seasons at Pitt, was a 1,000-yard receiver, caught 17 touchdowns last year, won the Blitnikoff. So he's a stud. He's a future NFLer. So I understand him wanting to, his quarterback left, his OC left. I understand him wanting to kind of, maybe it's his right now to look around and see what better situations there are and what better offense to play in than maybe a Lincoln Riley offense at USC. And he's in California right now, rumored to be training with Bryce Young, the quarterback at Alabama. So there's just a lot of moving parts over there with that Jordan Addison story. But yeah, it's like, I don't love the fact that rosters are being poached. It seems that I know that rosters have always been poached, but it seems like it's escalated. Like,
yeah, it's different. I think it's fair to say it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's for sure different. And, one that really caught my attention this past week was Marvin Grant, a starting safety at Purdue, a really good player, a 4-star player for Purdue. And he just hit the transfer portal. I'm assuming because somebody let him know, like, hey, we can help you get to where you want to be at the next level if you come play for us. Now, I really just don't like that, because that Purdue did a good job of signing a 4-star athlete, a 4-star safety, and having him on a good defense last year for Purdue. And now he's gone. He's likely gone. And I just, I know that would happen before all this stuff happened, but I just don't love that for the smaller programs of college football. So I don't love all this stuff, but I just think that, it's the sign of the times that it's not going back to the way things were. So things like this are going to keep happening, and it's hard for me to take and understand, but it's happening. So I need to get it through my head, basically. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answers to all this. I just hope that some legislation gets passed. Some rules are made for maybe how you contact these players or when the players are able to leave.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I totally already, because so many things have happened. It feels like in the last few days, I keep joking on various things that it feels like we have no off season this year, that we're just rolling through one long extended football season. Yeah. It definitely feels like that. I had totally forgotten about the Marvin Grant thing, which is a big deal. And he does not, to my knowledge, like at this point on Thursday, May 5th at 10:21 a.m., he does not have a landing spot or an announced landing spot yet. So I'll be fascinated to see what happens there. The one that I forgot, the guy from Notre Dame, or not Notre Dame, he went to Notre Dame, left Northwestern, the safety.
The safety, yeah.
And then you see, but he left before spring ball. I think it was at the end of last season. And boy, the reports you hear out of Notre Dame about him are just glowing. And he was great at Northwestern as well. But you're right, though. But that was even pre everyone talking about NIL, right? That just goes to show you how quickly this has really become a large part of the conversation. And honestly, as we talk about, you said, it's difficult to kind of put the toothpaste back in the bottle, so to speak, and it's not going to go back. The one thing that I would say that I think needs to happen, and just for full disclosure, I'm totally fine with all of this chaos. It doesn't really bother me, to be totally honest. I'm not pouring any out for the small schools. It just doesn't bother me. Sorry, I'm heartless for that. I'll take it. But I do think that there needs to be some sort of transfer window, right? I think that one of the, there need to be stricter dates on if you need to be in the portal by this date. And these are the times where colleges can really I guess, host different visitors for the transfer portal or whatever. Like you got to make stricter rules around that. You probably need to actually have 2 windows, right? Because it's kind of what it's happening now, where you have that postseason window, and then you also have this time of the year too, right after spring ball. That makes sense to just actually make that a thing, because the one thing that I think hurts everyone is where guys can go into the transfer portal at any time. Right. Like basically any time of the year, you can look up 1 a.m. and you see this guy that's gone into the transfer portal. Like that has to stop, right? Like you've got to be able to give coaches some sort of heads up or some sort of ability to navigate that, along with a couple of tweaks in the kind of the recruiting rules on how many guys you can take in a given year and all of that. Like those things need to meet the times, because otherwise you're starting to end up with a lot of schools that aren't even getting to meet their 85 scholarships. Like Nebraska being in this tight situation that they're in this offseason, like that is abnormal right now for what's happening around college football. There's a lot of schools, or most schools, are not able to hit those 85, given how much turnover is happening on rosters and the limited number of players that you can bring back in.
Yeah, and I think I saw on Twitter a couple days ago, or maybe even yesterday, that they are thinking about just like a 2 transfer window, like one maybe after the season and one maybe like after spring ball or something like that. I'll have to look that up to confirm actually which ones they're thinking about. But yeah, I definitely think that would help for sure. It would help, these programs try to set their rosters just so they kind of understand who's going to be there at the beginning of the year. Because boy, I mean, trying to write stories like at hailvarsity.com right now about like maybe projecting depth charts and talk about positions like we have doing, it's pretty difficult because we don't know who's going to be where when they, kick off against Northwestern in Ireland on August 20th, because it's, there's so much could happen right now. I don't even know who's going to be on the team right now. And so that's hard for me to judge and hard for me to accept, but here we are talking about it. So a lot of questions need to be answered. A lot of things need to be figured out with this. And, it's college football. It's entertaining. I'm trying to just keep along here.
I love that we could totally tell that you're just like, man, I don't know if I love all of these changes. In fact, I don't love most of them. But you've kind of got to find a way. Like it's interesting because it's so different depending on your point of view and how you interact with college football, like fans. And it depends on like who you're a fan of, right? Like, and let's be honest, the majority of people watching this right now are Nebraska fans, right? Nebraska fans have a little bit different view of NIL and collectives right now than say, Purdue fans would have. And so it's so dependent. And that's what's going to make this whole battle going forward of how this gets reformed really interesting, right? Because you could see a situation where Trev Albert says, well, we don't need to get the boosters completely out of it. Maybe we need guidelines around like when people can do this and the tampering and that sort of thing. But would it be in Trev Albert's best interest to say, let's get collectives out of here? No, like that wouldn't be in his best interest. Now it would be in the best interest of, say, the AD at Northwestern. Like, and so that's where it's going to be such a fascinating thing. And it comes back to the same thing that I feel like college athletics always comes back to. You end up having the haves and the have-nots, and those gaps and differences really get shown in times like this, right? You see it, in normal recruiting, you see it too. But you see it in facilities, you see it in coaches' salaries, and then everybody had to catch up no matter what with the coaches' salaries, because otherwise your top coaches were all going to be in the same schools. But it is just a fascinating thing to watch unfold. But it's very confusing as well, because the start of it was not set up clearly explained by the governing body of the sport. I will leave it at that.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with me is like I do enjoy, watching the small guys like on a Thursday night or something like that. I do like watching the UTEPs, the Tulsas, the Fresno States of the world, and those guys. Those teams. It's good football to watch. I believe. I'm not always just a huge program guy. I just like watch the sport so much that I enjoy watching everybody. And to think that if somebody from those programs does well, it's going to be like European soccer where they're getting poached to the next. You're getting and look, it's good for the players because they're going to get on a bigger stage. They're going to get more money. It's all good for them. But I'm just kind of worried about the smaller programs and how this is going to affect them. But I understand that I'm in the minority with that. And, it's just going to be, something to get used to.
I would be curious though on if you are actually in the minority on that, because I do think that there are more.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly.
Because I think, what I think though, I honestly think the last thing that you said is interesting, because when you say that, like, I understand, and I know this from knowing you, that you really enjoy watching all of these teams, right? And so being able to just enjoy the sport as a whole is one thing, but you said that it's good for the players, which it is. I think that where the friction there comes is that some people just want the players to be locked in and have to stay.
Yeah.
And then it becomes the argument of, well, the coaches don't have to stay. Then it becomes, you know what I mean? And so it gets really complicated and convoluted really quickly. But I can totally understand your initial point that, hey, if you're a Fresno State and you've developed an amazing running back, you found him in recruiting, you've developed him, you would like to see him stick it through. Yeah. And as a fan of Fresno State, as somebody who also is just not a fan of that team and just watching college football, you want to see that guy stick it through. So I totally understand, but it is also one of those things where I think we got here in large part because we're playing catch up on a lot of things that the NCAA decided to not do. And because now we have everything hitting at once when it didn't need to be like that. It is too much at one time. Like even as someone who's enjoying all of this, like I do admit that it's too much at once. But this is just the beginning of this conversation, right? Who knows? And next week we could have the NCAA actually come out with rules, but then we could also have boosters sue them. Who knows where we're going with this thing? I just think that we'll continue to talk about it, and it'll continue to be fascinating because you guys are talking about it all the time. Our mentions are filled with people talking about the transfer portal and NIL. But that's going to do it for us this week with this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Give this video a like. Also, make sure you go over to hailvarsity.com, subscribe to the website. We got the football yearbook coming up here soon. You still can get in on that deal as well. If you subscribe to the website and the magazine, you can get the football yearbook. We'll have a lot of great stories in there this year. We'll catch you guys next time.